This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview.
Well, I'm here with Darren Hazelwood, the CEO of Panther Metals Resources, just catching up in London after a few busy days that I've had. Nice to see you, Darren, in person.
And you too. How was the Aquis event?
Really good. I mean, I was surprised at the number of people that were there, and they stuck around all day. So I take that as maybe there's some confidence coming back to the sector. Maybe it's because of the news about the takeover from Six Group. But yeah, you know, there were lots of people there. It was oversubscribed and lots of interest in what was going on. So I take that as a positive, because a lot of the events I've been to recently, particularly in the mining sector, there's very few people turning up to these events.
Yeah, I think we're seeing signs though that the bottom's already been in the industry, in the market for the sector, and we're definitely bouncing off of the bottom. And indications like that are great. We're at Mines and Money in December. They've literally just opened the booking process for
meetings.
And we're already seeing invites coming through for meetings straight away.
Right.
So it does tell you that there's a positive vibe. And let's face it, the sector's undervalued.
Oh, massively.
You know, if you can't grow it, you've got to mine it. And there's been such a lack of investment over 15 years, but in particular the last 3 years. We're seeing drill rates in Canada that are way below what we were seeing even 18 months ago. You're looking at $110 a metre against $180, $200 a metre you're being quoted not so long ago.
Yeah.
And that's purely down to the fact that there's not the work about that there was, and that is down to a lack of risk capital into this sector. And it's actually at a time when we all know that the fundamentals for the sector and the supply chain is going to be under real stress, real pressure over the coming years, and it's not going to happen. That stress isn't going to happen in 5 or 10 years' time anymore, like we were looking at in a not too distant past. It's now round the corner, and these global supply chains, they have to keep up, and you're going to see a response in the market to that, and quite possibly you start to see that now.
I would hope so, yeah. And Gervais Williams, of course, you would be aware of him from Premier Might, and he was at the Aquis event yesterday, and he was talking about how he sees things coming down, and he says that a lot of the money at the minute is in the mid caps, but it's going to have to start flowing into the micro caps. You know, as these commodity prices, really, you can't ignore what you're seeing there. And he said the same thing that we all know, really, that people only really buy, you know, when it's too late, effectively, and it's, the market caps are already really high. But yeah, a significantly undervalued sector was definitely the message he was talking about, and he's buying stuff from Greatland Gold, of course, you know, the huge gold deposit, which is, you know, major market caps, right down to small market caps such as Nosterterra, you know, and actually his key. One of his key investment criteria was looking at companies who are moving from pre-cash to indeed cash flow. And of course, you know, Greatland Gold, and you know, cash flow is a little way away, but it's going down that route. Nosterterra, as an example, is getting to that point now. Of course, mining companies, you know, to get to that cash flow positive situation is very difficult, isn't it?
Well, it is, Mark, but I think what the investment community isn't aware of, despite some of us talking around this, and maybe that's something we're guilty of, talking around it rather than being specific, is that you are seeing interest from the majors at a very, very early stage now in these processes. The majors are understanding what's going on, what's required.
Well, they need to, really, because otherwise they're not going to be in business, in a few...
That's right.
Are you talking to majors?
There's communication, right? Are we as a business talking to majors? We're in communication with a lot of big companies. And the fact is that most of these companies should be. Because if you've got real projects that are very prospective, then you will be on their radars. And have we got those projects? Yes, we have. Can you go into details? No, you can't. But the majors are looking all the way down the food chain. And what that tends to do is they're missing out maybe on the mid-tiers that you're discussing there, that Gervais Williams was on about. But those mid-tiers, we're probably the breeding ground for the mid-tiers more than for the majors. But the mid-tiers are still just focused on their cash generative element of their businesses. Whereas the majors know they're looking forecast 5, 6, 10 years down the line. The CEOs of the majors, they've kept their powder dry. They all got burnt in around 2011, 2012. There were some deals done at levels that you weren't expecting. And they got burnt, and they haven't forgot that. However, because of their underinvestment over the last few years, and over the last 10, 12 years, because of that scenario, they're a long way behind the curve. And you've got the likes of Glencore, Barrick, BHP. They're all now building their own exploration teams again. And those exploration teams have got to go out there and they've got to find the projects that potentially can become mines in the next 5, 10 years. And yes, they are doing that. And yes, they are talking to juniors.
What do you think about the elections that Trump's in office? Do you think that's going to really change not just the general risk attitude, let's say, or the confidence in the money markets and also speculative investments, but generally for commodities and homegrown resources onshore in the United States?
Listen, this is a personal opinion, and it's one that I take on board as I could be completely wrong. I think it's a big positive for the industry. Right, as I say, if it can't be grown, it has to be mined. You need growth. But take away everything else, you have to have growth. And Trump is going to focus on growth. I think he's going to cut taxes. He's going to cut the bureaucracy of the American system. Any savings he's going to make, I think he's going to put through to tax cuts, which is going to bring more capital into the economy. Once you get more capital into an economy, you naturally get more risk capital then feeding through. And risk capital is what this sector's all about. Yeah. So I think it's an extreme positive. However, I will caveat that with I don't know what's going to happen in terms of the IRA money, etc., where the government have started to fund, the American government started to fund the industry.
Right,
and we're ultimately, this is a commercial organisations. Should it be relying on the government? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But I think you probably see some changes along those lines. But that's fine.
But investors will love to see that government backing.
They love free money, and don't we all? That's what we're working with Mel Sanderson. And we're following this and structuring this accordingly.
But do you think the government's going to get involved? It's more just like they want to secure their supply chains, isn't it, particularly the United States, rather than they're not going to actually be getting involved in the day-to-day running of these mining companies.
No, they're not. They're not. I think what you're going to see is, I suspect you're going to see a slashing of the red tape.
Yeah.
So if you have projects, you can actually take them forward, you can get a clear timeline to production and get on with it. Yeah. There's going to be a lot more of a go-to, get on with it attitude.
I agree.
That I think we've lost possibly over the last 10 years.
We've definitely lost that, and I get the confidence that might start to come back. But we're talking about the United States, of course, where Panther is Canada. What's your take on Canada? Different country to the United States. Do you feel similar moves from government, similar change of attitude?
Ontario, we've done nothing but found the Ontario government extremely supportive.
Yeah.
And the Canadian government. And
well, I know that George Pirrie often comes to these conferences. He's a minister, isn't he, for...
Yeah, George is all right.
Yeah,
George, good.
He'll probably be at Resourcing Tomorrow in December again. I interviewed him last year.
Yeah.
And he's very keen to talk to miners, and it's a mining community, isn't it?
It is, and I was in Thunder Bay in September, and George walked straight past me.
Right.
It was at the Thunder Bay Mining Conference, which isn't a big event, but it's not tiny.
So you were at that conference then, the Thunder Bay Mining Conference. What's the vibe on the ground there? You're in the heart of mining country for generations. Is it depressive? Is it optimistic?
This is an optimistic industry.
Yeah, well, you have to be.
I think that the industry recognises the challenges it's had over the last few years. It's certainly felt the pain from a withdrawal of the risk capital into the industry. But I think everybody's seeing green shoots. And you're now starting to possibly see that through the market as well in the UK.
Okay.
So no, I think it's Canada is always positive. It's a country built on mining, and the feeling in September was one of positivity. It maybe wasn't as busy as people are like, but like you say, you're going to get peaks and troughs in this. But once you start to see events pick up in terms of footfall, like you recognised yesterday in London, it means that we're on that path back. And people have got to remember that you can quickly see 100, 200, 300% moves in this sector once the confidence gets in there, once that ball starts rolling. And I think that's exactly what you're going to see. But you're going to see a slightly different approach. I think people want to see real things now. Whereas in the past, maybe soil sampling or rock chip samples would excite people, and you could see some big moves. I think now it's got to be fundamentals.
Right.
If you see those fundamentals, you'll see companies move. We've seen it in the UK with GMET, for instance. Move from 7 million market cap to 30 million. Why? Because it looks like they've got something genuine. So once you prove that you've got something genuine, you quickly move through those layers and through those levels. Because you've proved up, and then people can see a pathway to value. And ultimately, we're all there to create value.
Absolutely. We're talking about making things real. GMET's a really great example of that. Panther Metals, what are you doing now on the ground? I've been a little bit out of the loop these last couple of days, but I know you put some RNSs out recently on doing soil surveys. Is that right, at Dotted Lake?
We're drilling at Dotted.
You're drilling at Dotted
We're drilling,
now?
Actually, the soil survey, we've done soil programs. We've done 1,000 soil samples at Dotted. That's completed. We got that in before the snow come down, and that's going to be really exciting because it's broadened the whole reach of the Dotted Lake project. But look, we don't expect the market to move the needle. However, the information that will provide for us, and especially with the information that we're now privy to with the drilling that we've run alongside the soil program and what we're seeing, it will make a huge difference to our understanding.
So this is diamond drilling.
Diamond drilling.
At targeted areas where you've had those soil anomalies. With the objective to find mineralisation. Okay.
And understand these structures. Because you've got to remember, this has never been drilled.
Okay.
So this is effectively what you've got at Dotted Lake. You've got and with all of this, I have to caveat that I'm not a geologist. So if my terminology slips, then you're just going to have to live with it, right? So you've got a granite body, and then you've got two intrusive bodies lying next to each other on the north shore of Dotted Lake. Now, up until our drilling, that was always a theory. And the reason being is that the overburden on the north shore of Dotted Lake, whilst it's carrying commodity in the soils, and the overburden is the top layer. You know, your soils, your loose rock that might have been dragged there during ice ages and stuff like that. And that's what your overburden. Now, so your overburden can vary in depths. And at Dotted Lake, it's deep. It's just happens, that's what it is. So whilst all the geological signatures have been there, and those signatures have grown in understanding, and what I mean by signatures is like high commodity in soils, like nickel, copper, cobalt. We've got ridiculous numbers across quite a broad area.
Right, at soil sample level.
At soil sample level. That's a really good indicator, because that commodity has come from somewhere, and generally it's leached through from the rocks underneath.
Right.
And it's a good indicator. We know from the work that GT Resources did that that's a very positive sign in this area. And GT Resources have declared a new nickel belt over 20 kilometres. Well, if you add Dotted Lake onto that, it's going to make that nickel belt 30 kilometres. You know, this is a big system.
You anticipate it extends from that?
Yes.
Right.
We do now.
Okay.
So basically you've got this thick layer that nobody could ever get through. So normally you go trenching, you'd have rock from underneath that sticks out
Yeah.
from the surface.
Outcrops.
Exactly that, outcropping, and you take your samples off the outcropping. That would tell you if there's a chance for that system underneath to be mineralised. But the North Shore's got no outcropping. So on the geological surveys and what we've done with, particularly we through drone mag in 21, we had that basically digitised by Abitibi Geophysics this year. Once we got the drill permit for Dotted, had that digitised. We've got the soil numbers that were very positive. We know the work that GT had done, and we kind of put it all together. And then you have to basically do an analysis of that and say, right, is there something underneath here? Because you can't get to it. You can't trench down deep enough. So we've done everything we could. And the realities are, we looked at it, you do the calculations, and the risk reward we felt was in our favour.
Okay.
So then we go drilling, and that's what we've done. Now we've drilled, and the theory that we have, we've absolutely smashed it out of the park. It is spot on. We said it's a pentonite body. We said it would have mineralisation. We said it'd be an ultramafic. Now what ultramafic is a rock that basically was part of the fluids that come up from deep in the earth. And what it does, it works like if you see a water main in the road. If a water main fractures, you see water coming up from different areas. And that's the same as you'll get in an area like Dotted Lake. But instead of being asphalt or concrete, it's actually the Earth's crust. So it's a weak point in the Earth's crust that the fluids look to escape from. And with the pressure from underneath, that pushes up through those cracks and through those faults. And the fluids come up, they rise, and then they sit there, and that's your ore body. And effectively what's happened here is the ore bodies, that process has happened, and you've had your trees grow, and you've had ice ages and everything, and it's gradually been buried. And what we do know for certain, we were 100% right. And we also know that this is mineralised.
Yeah.
There is absolutely no doubts about that. It's mineralised throughout. We've drilled, I can't go into specifics, but we've drilled intersections that have intersected the ultramafic over 3 figures, and we're seeing evidence of mineralisation throughout that.
And that's mineralisation of nickel and copper?
It's mineralisation.
Right.
Right. At this stage, we have to be very careful what we say about that.
Okay.
We're seeing chrome in there. Chrome is strongly associated with nickel.
Okay.
So maybe there's an indicator for you there.
Right. So there's mineralisation. So there's something there.
Yes, 100%.
And so keeping things simple, then you've done your soil sampling. The overburden is really deep. So you're drilling through the overburden.
It's not really deep, but it's deep enough that you can't do trenching.
You can't do trenching and that kind of thing. So that's why you're drilling through it.
Yep.
And this is really to understand the system
Yep.
more than get a core back that shows you, real high grade copper, nickel, what have you.
But we also want to do that.
Yeah. That could happen. Yeah, but the objective really is to understand the system, and the bonus is make a big discovery.
Right, so what we're looking at doing, absolutely right, Mark, those fluids that have, under pressure, been forced through the Earth's crust and the fractures in the Earth's crust have come up, we want to know, were those fluids carrying mineralisation? Because the majority of fluids that do that process don't carry mineralisation.
Okay.
We know that those fluids that come up there 100% carry mineralisation, and we also know it's abundant. Now we've worked so far on what we call the west side. The reason is there's a fracture, a fault that runs in the middle. We're now moved over to the east side. In fact, the drill should be turning now.
Okay.
On the east side, but the interesting thing is that on the west side, where we've intercepted exactly what we hope to intercept, that we had hole number 2, which we really like the look of. So we moved the hole just about 325 metres further east, more towards a fault, and we drilled there. And again, same thing. So it's absolutely beautiful. Now we're moving round to the east side. But the east side is actually where the system opens up and expands, and we're getting the higher grade commodity in soils. Okay. We've got bigger structures there, and it's almost it's almost like a rugby ball.
Okay. Yep.
Whereas it's fine at one end, pinches out, and then pinches in, but it's actually running in kind of an S shape.
Okay.
And where the core of that S.
So you understand.
Is where the Y
you understand
system is.
where it's running. You got an idea of the system.
Yeah.
And how long is this drill program planned for?
We've probably got good question. Good question.
It's flexible.
Yeah.
It seems flexible because obviously you said you like the look of one, so you moved nearby. So
yeah.
You're doing it as an ongoing basis. It must be an end date though.
Well, I spoke to the drillers actually yesterday, to Steve who owns Platinum Diamond Drilling, in terms of extending the program. We may want to do that, but there's other conversations that are happening with other people that we want involved in these conversations.
Okay.
So, there'll be decisions to be made.
So people are having conversations with you, looking at what you're doing, and looking at the results as they're coming out.
We wouldn't be doing we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't have people looking at what we're doing, especially in this area. Because but this is what people don't quite understand, and I get why we maybe haven't been very good at broadcasting this. But the discoveries made by GT Resources that brought Glencore on board. And Glencore now owns 16.2% of GT Resources, right?
Yeah.
So this is over 20 kilometres. GT Resources did this. This area wasn't even mapped by the Canadian Geological Society. So GT Resources has gone in there and made 6 new discoveries, very high grade nickel, in 6 different areas over 20 kilometres. And they've called it a new nickel belt in Canada. And what people don't necessarily understand is Dotted Lake is looking like it's just an extension of that.
Yeah, okay.
All right. So suddenly, this brings in all kinds of possibilities in terms of value creation for your shareholders. Because number one, people don't want one person in an area because it's the FOMO, it's the fear of missing out, right? But also people want to control an area. So you have that scenario.
Okay.
So, and on a project where like we own it 100%, we've got no underlying financial commitments on it, no NSRs, no zero. No, we've got a blank piece of paper here, and people are aware of that.
Well, you've mentioned so GT Resources and Glencore own a percentage of GT Resources.
Yes, 16.2%, yeah.
So potentially Glencore might be people who are interested in what you're doing.
Oh, no, I can't speculate.
It's possible though.
I can't. I'd rather move on.
Okay, well, what about this question? I mean, the program that you're doing now then, has that been driven by outside interest?
Partly, yes.
Right, okay, so we don't know how long this program's going to go on for, but it's running till the end of the year anyway, is it? Or does the weather stop you? Or
No, in fact, it's the complete opposite.
Right,
to be fair, because of the overburden and the topography at Dotted, and it's been very wet there.
Okay.
So we had problems in terms of getting the trails in, and we're actually wanting it to freeze. The drillers on site are desperate. It was -8 there yesterday, which is fantastic. Okay. Because it just takes a bit of that moisture out the ground, and it makes it easier for them. Because they were at times they've got a big skidder, and this thing's got 6-foot wheels. It's huge.
Okay.
But those wheels at times were going 4 foot deep.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So certainly at the start of the program, whilst we've got the main trails already in, the trails off. We had to work diligently to make sure that we could get exactly where we wanted to, and we've done it. The guys have done brilliant. They've worked through the issues, and no, and to answer your question, if it was to freeze permanently tomorrow, it'd be a dream scenario.
Right. Okay. And I'm trying to understand what investors can perhaps get excited about or looking forward to here. What's the sort of plan? I mean, will you start announcing these results to the market, or?
Yeah, some of the cores already at the labs.
Right. Okay.
It's already back at Thunder Bay, being cut to go to labs.
And then,
that only takes a few days, so
Okay.
it's in between that sort of process.
Apart from results that come back with regards to potential mineralisation and then potential grades of that mineralisation, obviously, if nothing kind of stands out in that regard, what's the outcome of this then? To understand the system, or what does it actually mean for you or people who are looking at you, or indeed investors, that you as a company now understand the system more? Does it actually really, is it value creative?
Absolutely. It's hugely value creative. When you've got the mineralisation in a confined area, and you're making those discoveries, that is without doubt exactly what every explorer is looking to do. And this is where you get those explosive moves, because this is Greenfield's exploration. And we all know that the early stage Greenfield explorers is where the greatest value is made. But they're also the most difficult ones to pinpoint and find.
Yeah, but this isn't fill or kill then. This isn't like it's there or it's not. It is there.
Oh, it's there.
It's there, so it's not like a fill or kill. Is it more about how much is there, or are you sort of, is it magnifying glass time? Is it like sort of, zooming in to where it's concentrated?
No, it's not magnifying glass time.
Okay.
For certain. And the value event on the ground, I think, has already been achieved by us in terms of the RNS on Monday.
Right.
In that, we've got an ultramafic body that is carrying mineralisation.
But do you not need to know how much mineralisation to know if it's economical? Or?
Oh, absolutely. And that's where your assay results come in.
Right.
But what this is about is understanding, is this system carrying all the way through it?
Right, okay.
And all the indications are that it is.
It is.
And it has to be. You've got to remember that, for instance, at West Pickle Lake, GT Resources put in 68 holes there.
Yeah.
In one area. We're putting in 6 holes, but that, as I say, that might increase, so you can't hold me to that.
So would you then be waiting for a phone call? Well, not necessarily waiting for a phone call, but anticipating phone calls and anticipating conversations?
No, there's no anticipation. These conversations are ongoing.
Yeah, as the drill program is ongoing.
Yeah, this is ongoing, and these aren't conversations that have just started because of the drill program.
Yeah. Okay.
People I've told people many times, and I've said it in interviews, that these conversations they've been ongoing for some time. People are acutely aware of the potential here, and especially in Canada.
Yeah.
And they've been ongoing, and I guess as you're going through the program and you're starting to turn it from theory into reality.
Yeah.
Then those conversations often they happen more often.
So what's the inflection?
And at a higher,
what's the inflection point then? Is it immediate, or is it slowly? Understanding, and maybe it takes another year or two to really understand it and the value to be built in, or is there an inflection point?
No, I think this isn't one for us and for where we sit as a junior explorer to be sitting on our hands and waiting a year or two. Investors have already seen that. They've done it over the last 4 years as we've navigated through this market. Now, and I said probably 4 or 5 months ago that we've got to accelerate what we're doing, and that's exactly what we're doing. So this isn't one to sit on. We will push through the levels on this.
Okay.
And
so keep drilling, keep looking, keep understanding until you get a call, until you I don't know, you start going down study route to prove it up further. What's the sort of until?
The value accretive event for Panther is without doubt bringing somebody in on the project.
Okay.
Right? So I've touched base before on the fact that we've had offers on this project, and or had conversations around potential deals to be done. And even though the market was so difficult and so challenging, I always felt that the potential on the table was a heroin shot, really, for the business. i.e. Real short term, pleases a few people. You go up 30, 40% on the back of a deal. But in reality, what you're doing is giving away a huge amount of the value at such an early stage before you've got any idea or any indication of what's going on. And I always felt that it had to be a deal with the prospectivity that should be at multiples of where any potential deal was at that time.
Okay.
And I will maintain that. So as an explorer, you are conscious of your investors, and what you want to do is create the best value for your investors in a challenging market. Now, it's not easy. We've made all the right moves so far, so we're not about to give this thing away at all.
Okay.
Would we continue having conversations? Absolutely we would, but that's just part of the value accretive process.
Okay. So I noticed a tweet you did yesterday where you sort of apologised that the RNS was very technical.
Yeah, sorry.
And I think it's also the problem because we've got to remember when we were private investors, you know, you a bit more longer than me, but 10 years ago, you wouldn't understand these things. And when you get in it, I interview people all the time, you talk about it all the time. We almost, like, we don't see, you know, how complicated these things are. Taking it back to sort of layman's terms, what does it actually mean? What are you actually doing? If I had to try to articulate that now, and you can tell me, a dotted lake, you know there's mineralisation there. You're expecting, or you know that where the ore body is trajectory, where it's heading. You believe it's a follow-on from what GT Resources have got, moving on to your area, and it's about drilling now to understand that system more. And yeah, the feather in the cap, if you like, the bonus would be to get, you know, some kind of standout core coming up from the ground. But really, it's about drilling to understand the systems. Forget all the technical words in the RNS, Mayford intrusive and all of that. It's to understand the system. To then, wave the flag.
Well, the key takeaway is basically that it's an intrusive, so it's fluids that have come up from deep under the earth, and when they've come up, they've carried mineralisation with them. That's what you want as a junior explorer, and that's what we've got. That is basically what that RNS is saying.
Okay.
It's good.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Darren, for taking the time. I don't know how long we spoke for.
I don't.
Half an hour, probably.
Listen,
nice to do something in person here. It's a little bit chilly, but you know, it's nice.
Listen, London's a beautiful city.
It's a beautiful city, and King's Cross, it's lovely here. Yeah, so it's good to see you in person. And I will be at Resourcing tomorrow, or Mines and Money. Yeah, Resourcing tomorrow, Mines and Money. Yeah. So I'll see you then.
I prefer Mines and Money. Call me old-fashioned.
Yeah,
Mines and Money. Everyone knows what Mines and Money is.
But interesting to see, you know, you said it was one of the better ones you went to last year.
It was awesome.
And you had some good conversations. So interesting to see what those conversations are like this year.
Yeah, and we've continued with some of those conversations as well.
Okay.
You know, these are people that we come into our network at the event. And I've maintained quite a number of those relationships. And as everyone knows, Mines and Money is an event that does draw in some of the higher echelons of the industry. Yeah. And they may not necessarily be interested at that point in a junior explorer without anything of any real interest. But you just don't know where that'll take you further down the line, and I expect those relationships to bear fruit certainly now and over the short and medium term.
Yeah. Do you plan doing any Ontario shows or PDAC or?
Nick's definitely going to PDAC. Yeah. I've actually wasn't planning on going to PDAC this year. Okay. I'm aware of the company, and you have to have a reason for this. And we made some good contacts last year. We've built on those. But to be honest with you, I've now marked PDAC out in my diary because due to events happening in Dotted, I fully expect to be at PDAC this year.
Right, okay, good. Well, thank you, Darren, for your time. Good to talk to you.
Thanks, Mark. Cheers.
Okay.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programmes at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.